Good evening, everyone. We welcome you all to our Ortho TV online original webinar series. This webinar, we have two senior orthopedic surgeons who are going to be speaking on osteoporosis. We have Dr. Ram Prabhu from Mumbai. He is the past president IOA, and he's going to be speaking on sarcopenia and osteoporosis management. And we have senior orthopedic surgeon from Delhi, Dr. C.S. Yadav, who's going to be speaking on proximal femoral fragility fractures, preventing it, and what is the role of arthroplasty. We also have panelists, myself, Dr. Neeraj Bijlani, Dr. Ashish Singh from Patna, and Dr. Salim Patel from Zydus. This webinar is brought to us by an educational grant by Zydus, which are the maker of injection Decadurabolin. So over to Dr. Ram Prabhu to kindly share his screen.
Have you got the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I can't see. Okay, anyway. All right.
Yes, sir.
We can see your screen, Dr. Ram.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, good morning, friends. Thank you very much, Zydus, for getting us together. I also welcome Dr. C.S. Yadav, my colleague and my good friend, a senior orthopedic surgeon from Delhi and joint replacement surgeon. Also, panelist Dr. Salim Patel, Dr. Ashish Singh, and Dr. Neeraj Bijlani, who have got us together today. And we are going to talk about some interesting topic, which is going to be known to orthopedic surgeons, and it comes in day-to-day practice. I'm going to talk little on osteosarcopenia, an evaluation in understanding osteoporotic fracture. All of us have been knowing osteoporosis for more than a century now, but unfortunately little has been known about sarcopenia and osteosarcopenia, which is equally important, if not more important, in orthopedic practice, and especially for the elderly generation. The most important success of older adults is maintaining a good physical status and functional status, and at the same time remaining continent. And these are the pleasures of life which you have to enjoy in your senior or elderly life. The musculoskeletal system is strong enough to withstand physical activities, and for the balancing act we need a neuromuscular system, which is absolutely, it has to be intact. Your proprioception has to be intact, your balancing system has to be good, and it also stores the calcium. The bone stores the calcium, which is very important metabolically for day-to-day function. The longevity with good activity maintains good physical and functional status, and the longevity with minimal activity has a hefty penalty to pay in case if we have problems like osteoporosis. The osteoporosis with trivial fall can result in fracture, which can lead to plenty of disability, morbidity, and sometimes mortality too. So we have for centuries. So basically, osteoporosis has been defined by Palmer way back in 1895, and he described it like as a disease of elderly with fragility fractures and their complications. So why not pick up osteoporotic for a person before they actually develop a fracture or before they start losing height? And this is the crux of the whole preventive aspect of managing osteoporosis and also managing the muscle imbalance, muscle problems. The determinants of bone strength are genetic, race, and gender, which are unavoidable and we hardly have any control on them. But smoking, excessive alcohol, deficiency of sex hormones, having a thin and lean demeanor, chronic calcium and vitamin D deficiency, and sedentary lifestyle are avoidable things which has to be avoidable. In a lighter sense, if your father is poor, you are unlucky. But if your father-in-law is poor, you are stupid. So you don't have to be stupid to manage all these osteoporosis, and you have to take care of all these deterrents which you have to prevent. Soon people realize that BMD is not the only determinant of fragility fracture. Bone quality is also important, and that's the reason FRAX tool was introduced. And this actually tells us the possibilities of fracture in future, and which can actually predict who and how and when one can have a fracture in future. The fractures are main clinical consequences of osteoporosis. And if you see the burden of this in India, there are more than 1.5 million osteoporotic related fractures per year, out of which hip fractures constitute almost 300,000, vertebral fractures are 700,000, wrist fractures constitute almost 250,000, and other fractures are 300,000 fractures. So you can imagine the burden that has on the medical and the health expenses of India. We also know that 1 in 2 women and 1 in 5 men over the age of 50 will suffer a fracture in their remaining lifetime. 55% of the persons over the age of 50 are at increased risk of fracture due to low bone mass. And if you can see this age-related changes in the femoral neck cortex and association with hip fracture, at the age of 20-year-old and at the age of 80-year-old, you can see this cross-section of femoral neck, preferential thinning of the inferior anterior cortex is seen and increased cortical porosity. And that's the reason why in the fragility fracture patient assessment, history should also include the family history of osteoporosis, onset of menarche or menopause, the nutritional status of a person, medication like taking medication for hypertension, diabetes, and other metabolic problems, level of activity the person has, the fracture history, fall history, and the risk factors for falls, whether he takes he takes alcohol or smokes, whether there are risk factors of secondary osteoporosis, finding out any metabolic problem, and prior level of function. So there are a host of laboratory tests which are required. The basic tests are calcium, phosphorus, alkaline phosphatase, and vitamin D estimation. And there are some specialized tests which are required to find out there is a possibility of a secondary osteoporosis. BMD, of course, is a current gold standard for diagnosis of osteoporosis, and this has to be done in most of the cases where we are actually going to start the treatment for osteoporosis. So the ideal would be to prevent falls, which is absolutely important, decrease the chances of fracture after the fall, and improve the outcome after the fracture. And this is extremely important. So we come to a very important topic of sarcopenia, which was defined according to the Asia Working Group of Sarcopenia criteria, in which the assessment of walking speed and grip strength is done, and at the same time finding out if there is diabetes, chronic kidney disease, stress, poor physical activities, or poor nutrition is there. The symptoms and signs include a decrease in muscle mass, weakness, loss of endurance, poor balance, and trouble climbing stairs. And all these are very important. Even if there is 1 or 2 which are present, which should always suspect if the person has got sarcopenia, especially in the elder group. So what is the association between sarcopenia and osteoporosis? Sarcopenia was associated with 3-fold high risk of osteoporosis. And this table will tell you how this risk increases. How do you check? We do a skeletal muscle mass index, in which the sarcopenia, there is a low muscle mass, which I have already spoken, below 5.4 kilogram per meter square in women and below 7 kilogram in meter square in men. And this should arouse a suspicion of sarcopenia or having muscle mass which is low. Binkley and Buring in 2009 gave a very good terminology of osteosarcopenia, because they exist with each other in many of the cases. A subgroup of frail older patients with higher risk of falls, fractures, and disability and frailty. And this is, in fact, basically osteosarcopenia, and which is seen in many of these which are combined together. So in which Boring said that hip fractures and sarcopenia, there are 300 women with hip frailty fractures were seen. 58% were also sarcopenic. The men aged more than 65 years, there was a fracture risk which was 3.5 times more in osteosarcopenia versus only sarcopenia or osteopenia alone. So this is a measure of problem or consequences of both these together. And this is a Korean study where they said osteosarcopenia in patients with hip fracture is related with high mortality, in which they said, and they checked 324 elderly patients. In females were 246, males were 78, and in which the normal fractures were about 20%, only osteoporosis was about 43%, sarcopenia was 9%, and osteosarcopenia constituted about 29%. The mortality at 1 year in males in osteosarcopenia was about 26%, and in non-osteosarcopenic patient was 2.1%. So you can imagine it is almost 10 folds more mortality when the patients have osteosarcopenia. So prevention and the treatment of osteosarcopenia includes also physical activities, some kind of exercises, and in India, yoga and meditation really is a very good part of it to have your physical strength. And there is also very important part, which is dietary proteins, which is a very important role in maintenance of the musculoskeletal integrity. Healthy older adults are still not taking adequate amount. At the same time, we must remember that excessive intake of protein may also lead to some adverse effects. So we have this fantastic four, which is very important for osteosarcopenic treatment. Calcium, vitamin D, and phosphate, that all of us know, but protein, which also constitutes a very good important ingredient of your diet. So we have one excellent example in Mumbai Orthopedic Society, who turned into 5 years from a flabby young gentleman to a very strong, healthy, very strong muscles individual. And this can happen, and this is possible with any individual with proper diet, with proper intake of calcium, vitamin D, proteins, etc. And we are going to talk about one more product which is also important for getting those muscle strength. So these fantastic fours are very important. At the same time, exercises, maybe dancing if you like, but some kind of exercises which are day to day, every day, sincerely and honestly done are important. So what are the criteria for diagnosis of sarcopenia? The first and foremost is low muscle mass, low muscle strength, and low physical performance. And for that, we have our MRI to our rescue, of finding out actually objectively how this muscle mass is reduced. So we have in this a cross section of a leg or thigh muscles, in which we can see the age of 25 how these muscles are looking, and at age of 63 the same person with sarcopenia, these muscles are grossly wasted and thin. Similarly, in the spine and paraspinal muscles, if you can see at the age of 25 how these muscles look, and at the age of 63 they are grossly inadequately helping the spine to balance. How do you diagnose sarcopenia? So we have older subjects which are more than 65 years. We measure gait speed, we measure grip strength, and we measure muscle mass. And this is an algorithm which can help you to find out whether there is any sarcopenia or no sarcopenia. And the diagnosis of sarcopenia mainly is finding out the muscle mass, the muscle strength, and physical performance. In muscle mass, we can do CT, we can do MRI, we can do DEXA, we can also do specialized tests like bioimpedance analysis. We can also do total or partial body potassium per fat-free soft tissue. These are very important to find out the muscle mass. We also can see the strength by checking hand grip strength, flexion and extension at the knee strength, the peak expiratory flow. So we basically check height, grip, strength in most of these cases. And in physical performance, there are specialized things that we check. We usually check the gait speed. We do timed get up and go test. There is a stair climb power test. And important is SPPB, or short physical performance battery. So these are very important to find out how the mass, strength, and body performance or physical performance is, to find out the sarcopenia. Now, what are the causes of sarcopenia? There is primary sarcopenia, which is essentially age-related sarcopenia. There is no other cause evident except aging. And there is a secondary sarcopenia, is activity related. Basically, person who is taking bed rest, has a sedentary lifestyle. So this or a zero gravity condition can give rise to this secondary sarcopenia. If second is disease-related sarcopenia, which is associated with chronic debilitating conditions like COPD, tuberculosis, osteoporosis, if there is a major surgery which has been done, injury or critical illnesses or burns. And there is nutrition-related sarcopenia, which results from mainly malabsorption syndrome, gastrointestinal disorders, or use of medication that cause anorexia. So these are the causes, these are the primary and secondary sarcopenia which we see in practice. There are various treatment options that we see, which is also good for osteoporosis. We have seen biphosphonates, denosumab, teriparatide, SERMs with a decreased risk of breast cancer, like raloxifene, and hormone replacement therapy. Calcitonin used to be used, but now no more longer used nowadays. And important that we are going to talk about is nandrolone decoinate. For use, I'll use nandrolone only as an adjuvant to specific treatment and dietary measures. So this is a very important, and I'm going to talk about it in few slides. The nutrition, as I told you, is very important, which has a beneficial factor. We have lots of micronutrients having these different molecules. We have magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, vitamin C, etc., which are very important, as good as copper, calcium, selenium, zinc, etc. also. But at the same time, there are potentially detrimental dietary factors which should be avoided at all costs. Excess alcohol, excess caffeine, excess sodium, fluoride, phosphorus, all these are detrimental to your health, especially for the bones and for the muscles. So the take-home message would be, in osteosarcopenia, encourage all your friends, family members, and patients to improve physical activity. Longevity with poor physical activity leads to sarcopenia, and poor BMD plus sarcopenia will result in osteosarcopenia, which may result in increased risk of falls, fractures, morbidity, and poor outcome, sometimes even mortality. So now we talk about nandrolone for the use of helping to prevent this sarcopenia and osteoporosis. This is useful in postmenopausal osteoporosis. It increases BMD at lumbar spine and femoral neck. Significant improvement of lean body mass and muscle mass is seen. Reduced incidence of new vertebral fractures up to 50%. And radial BMD shows mild improvement. It is also useful in relieving bone pain. All these are very important uses of nandrolone. So what is the recommended dose of nandrolone in our practice? It is used as an adjuvant to specific therapies and dietary measures in pathological conditions. It is used as 25 to 50 milligram intramuscularly, especially given deep intramuscularly, every 3 weeks, up to 5 doses. There are various myths about nandrolone, and I'm going to tell you the facts, and I'm going to prove that these are myths. Nandrolone decoinate is similar to corticosteroids, is a myth. Actually, it is not true, because corticosteroids are catabolic steroids, whereas nandrolone is an anabolic steroid. Corticosteroids increases the bone loss and have high tendency of bone thinning, whereas nandrolone increases the bone mineral density and is useful as an adjunct to specific therapies and dietary measures in management of osteoporosis. Steroids lead to muscle wasting, whereas nandrolone, lean body mass and muscle strength increases. There's another myth that nandrolone cannot be given in diabetic patients, which is absolutely wrong. Because in normal non-diabetic patients, Nandrolone actually doesn't hamper the glucose tolerance when used at a therapeutic dose. In diabetic patients, Nandrolone can improve the glucose tolerance and also has the metabolic effect on anabolic, may decrease the blood glucose. That's why it is important to decrease the requirement of insulin and other hypoglycemic agents. Thus, it requires glucose monitoring on frequent intervals because it can also cause hypoglycemia, which is not desirable. Other myth is Nandrolone is not safe in cardiac patients, which is wrong because the fact is in healthy men, Nandrolone does not significantly change cardiac functions. Also, it has impact on lipid profile. It does not influence lipid parameters such as triglycerides, cholesterol, lipoproteins. But it is important to monitor BP and lipid profiles before initiating the therapy, during the treatment, and after completion of therapy with Nandrolone. Another myth which is commonly seen is Nandrolone has high androgenic side effects because it is anabolic steroid. But in effect, we have seen some kind of androgenic effect like mild virilization of hair growth or hoarseness in voice in females when administered beyond recommended dose. But this effect can be reversed once the treatment is discontinued. And this is one fear that women have in using this very good uh, treatment for osteoporosis and sarcopenia. Nandrolone, one another myth is Nandrolone can cause edema or water retention, which is also wrong. The fact is Nandrolone had an overall positive effect on fat-free mass without expanding the extracellular water in COPD patient. And this is very important. And this all these so-called anecdotal myths have been proved to be factually wrong. There is one other myth that does Nandrolone cause cancer, which is a very absurd kind of myth. In fact, Nandrolone does not induce increase in prostate tumor markers, but it's contraindicated in prostate cancer patient. And this is very important because we do not give any anabolic steroids or not true because Nandrolone does not induce increase in prostate tumor markers, but it's contraindicated in prostate cancer, which is important. So friends, we know the good effects of Nandrolone, which is given as an anabolic steroid in cases of sarcopenia. And we have been using this for almost 40 years for osteoporosis because we did not have many drugs or medication for osteoporosis before. And since my residency days in 77, we have been using this and we have found that to be extremely useful, especially in the patients of osteoporosis and sarcopenia. And patients are able to have a normal good strength even in the elderly age group. And it is mandatory and we are obligated to give them good life even in the 70 and 80th age and the 7th and 8th decade. So it's important that we give them good drugs, good diet, good calcium, vitamin D, phosphate, and proteins, and along with that, give anabolic steroids maybe once a year, a dose of 5 injections. Thank you very much, friends. And over to you, Dr. Neeraj and Dr. C.S. Yadav for taking it further.
Sir, excellent talk, sir. Excellent.
Thank
Covering
you.
all the aspects.
Thank you, sir.
So do you want to take questions now or we'll take it at the end together?
Take it at the end. It will be better.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So Dr. C.S. Yadav, can you share your screen?
That my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So on the Zoom video where you see the video, you just on the bottom there is share screen button.
Yeah,
Screen arrow.
share a screen. Yeah, button
Yes.
is there.
Once you click on share screen,
Neeraj, are you going to call me again?
yeah, for the discussion.
Okay, fine. All right.
So I have clicked it and I think,
Then you have to select power. You have done it. Yes.
yeah. Hello?
Yes, we can see it. Come on. You can start.
Should I start?
Yes, you can start, sir.
And this proximal femoral fragility fracture, it is very important aspect, as Dr. Ram Prabhu covered the very much more important aspect. And important thing is that prevention is most important, and most controversial thing is role of arthroplasty in upper end of femur. It covers fracture neck femur and fracture intertrochanteric as well. So how should go forward?
In the center of the screen, just click, just press your mouse, it will start working.
Center of a screen. Huh?
Now, select the PowerPoint at the bottom first. Not Zoom, PowerPoint. That is besides the word one. नहीं bottom नीचे जाइए नीचे हाँ नीचे ये वाला yes ये वाला yes
should I click it?
हाँ click yes of course.
So after working 22 years at AIIMS as a professor joint replacement surgeon, I joined as a chairman in Sir Gangaram Hospital in the department of joint replacement. And issue is very important. This issue, because of old age, large number of incidents, so it becomes very important, and high morbidity and mortality, as Dr. Ram Prabhu covered, and huge cost is involved in the treatment of these fractures. So what happens with the growing age? So this is basically pathogenesis of fracture of upper end of femur. So what happens with the growing age? There is a growing osteoporosis, as Dr. Ram explained nicely, growing sarcopenia, and both combined together, it leads to poor body control, and that leads to tendency to fall. Because of poor body control, frequent fall, and bone is already osteoporotic. So it ultimately leads to vertebral fracture and fracture upper end of femur. So fragility, ultimately fragility fracture. So I believe in three things most in the field of arthroplasty. I regularly use them. I do only arthroplasty practice, no general orthopedic. So these are my favorite drugs, and they are found basically foundation of my arthroplasty practice. Vitamin D, anabolic steroid, as Dr. Ram explained, and bisphosphonate. So what are the issue in arthroplasty? Stress shielding. It is very important issue, and if you use all these things, stress shielding diminishes significantly. And stress shielding is not only seen in the total hip arthroplasty. Most of the people do not know about the stress shielding in the total knee arthroplasty. So these three drugs, they are very important to prevent stress shielding. Osteointegration, that is also very important in the especially in total hip arthroplasty. Muscle strength, osteoporosis. And when you use these drugs, I have seen patient feels more energetic, alert. He is more cooperative with the physiotherapy. And falls and injury after the surgery, they are less after using all these three drugs, and overall function of the patient. So you can see supracondylar fracture, that is most common cause is stress shielding after the total knee arthroplasty around 6 months. So if you use all these drugs, they are all prevented, and these drugs, they act on muscle level, bone level, blood level, and other system as well. So I will not cover. And actually what happens if you do any surgery, it leads to catabolic state and overall inflammation. So if you use all these drugs, they prevent this catabolic state, they enhance the anabolic state. This is very important, and it is basically double blind and randomized trial. What it shows, muscle strength and functions, they improve significantly in one group where they have used anabolic steroid. And so overall, the quadriceps muscle strength and knee society score, it was better at 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year, where this anabolic steroid was used. So overall improved outcome. So it is basically replacement research. So I am not going into the general orthopedics overall body health, as Dr. Ram already explained that. And as I told you, total knee arthroplasty at 6 months stress shielding is important, and total hip in the long term. So now coming to the surgical aspect, these fracture in upper end, beyond 60, they are controversial treatment is there. So especially in the fracture neck femur between the age of 60 and 75, there is a lot of controversy over the treatment. And fracture intratrochanteric beyond the age of 70, there is a once again controversy whether to sacrifice the joint or replace the joint. And if sacrifice, then once again there is a controversy, then which type of arthroplasty? So it is full of controversies. So I will cover all these issues, and I will cover other relevant issues like that, comparison of various treatments, their advantage and disadvantage, indication of total hip arthroplasty, and selection of implant for the total hip arthroplasty, and surgical tips and tricks in these situations. So modalities of treatment, like they are non-operative, it has almost no role. Internal fixation, it has limited role. And arthroplasty. In arthroplasty, we have 3-4 component: unipolar, bipolar, or total hip arthroplasty, or dual mobility cup. Among the arthroplasty, whether cemented or non-cemented, girdle stone. So these are the various modalities of treatment. I will discuss one by one. Now about the role of non-operative treatment. It can be offered non-operative treatment, like patient who was not ambulating at all before the fracture, like patient was already on the bed and patient was already on the wheelchair bound. In these cases, you may avoid surgery. And when patient is unfit for the surgery, extreme terminal age group, and unable to do SLR, it may be relative contraindication for surgery. If patient is able to do SLR, it means patient should go for the surgery. And sometime impacted fracture neck femur, but I will prefer to operate. And most important thing is, do not put into the bed. That is most important. That is the old concept कि आपने traction लगा दिया, बिस्तर में लटका दिया. That is wrong. If you are not giving her operative treatment, in bed mobilization and wheelchair mobilization is excellent alternate. Now, how to decide whether to sacrifice or save the joint? This depends on the fracture pattern, type of the fracture, geometry of the fracture, age of the fracture, whether fracture is old and fresh, physiological age of the patient, anesthesia fitness level, cognitive function of the patient, comorbidities, pre-fracture activity. That is most important to decide whether you will go for hemi-arthroplasty and total hip arthroplasty, pre-fracture activity. That is most important. And about the internal fixation, like in the fracture neck, now I will discuss modalities one by one. Internal fixation, undisplaced fracture, non-union, and avian rate is very high even in the undisplaced fracture. So overall conversion rate to the arthroplasty is around 10%. It means even if you do fixation, more than 10% people will require surgery. And if they are treated non-surgically, then surgery will be required in more than 50% cases. It means you should operate even undisplaced fracture, either go for the internal fixation or go for the arthroplasty. And about the displaced fracture neck of femur, conversion rate to the THR after the fixation at 3-year follow-up, it is up to 50%. It means even after the fixation, they may require arthroplasty. And after the hemi-arthroplasty in displaced fracture neck of femur, conversion rate from internal fixation, it fails in 16% cases. So it means the overall definitive treatment is replacement, but there is a no role of non-operative treatment. It doesn't mean I am in favor of, very much in favor of replacement. I always, but you have to be very judicious. I call natural joints, they are our sanctum sanctorum. Try to preserve them at any cost. I call them internal amputations. So, but there is a definitive role of arthroplasty. Now, which arthroplasty? Whether uni, bi, or dual mobility. Decision is based on these three things. Like most important parameter, processes should outlive the patient. That is most important. Suppose you have done bipolar and it fails in 2-3 years, then what is fun of doing bipolar? Go for the THR since very beginning. And which modality is giving better functional result? Second important aspect. And which modality is providing early rehabilitation? So these three aspects should be considered when you are offering the which type of arthroplasty. Now, few points about the unipolar. It has very limited role. I have not done unipolar like Austin Moore in my life of orthopedics career. Like after completing my senior residency, I have not done it. And but it may have role at the primary care center, and it is when critically age group patient, critically ill, terminal age, low demand group, when you are sitting at primary health center, you have no better alternate than you can offer even that unipolar. And because it is easier to do, it decrease, there is a less intraoperative complication, probably less dislocation, it is cost effective. So in this situation, you may consider unipolar. And drawbacks, if you go through the drawbacks are, there is a long list, like loosening, thigh and acetabular pain, acetabular erosion, ultimately early failure, and offset in limb length cannot be restored. So if you have better alternate, go for the better alternate. That's why I have never done unipolar. And if you go through the various studies, they echo the same things. And failure is very early. Even patient functional results are not very good with the unipolar. And similarly, many meta-analysis study, they say, I will not go into the detail, they prove same thing. Now question is, why bipolar? Because majority of the report, they are in favor of bipolar over the uni. Few reports, they say results are same, but it is results are same in very, very, very low demand patient. And these were the criteria of results. And advantage of bipolar over unipolar, revision rate is much less in comparison to uni. And early thigh pain, acetabular pain, it is not seen. And Harris score is better in the bipolar in comparison to the unipolar. But these are the not only advantage, but also neck length offset can be adjusted in bipolar, not in unipolar. So overall limb length cannot be restored in the unipolar. So now, but suppose about the bipolar, supposed to be less dislocation than the THR. Why bipolar? Another important, people think now bipolar has less dislocation than the THR, then they go for the bipolar, but it is not true now. If you go through the bipolar or you go through the THR, if you think patient will live long, dislocation rate is almost same nowadays because of importance of extended myocapsular repair and LDH and dual mobility cup. And even we have seen, you can see in these photographs, the bipolar also dislocate. I revise at least one bipolar in 3 months, 1 or 2 bipolar in 3 months for the dislocation. So it is not true bipolar doesn't dislocate. You can see another case of bipolar dislocation, and you can see acetabular erosion over here. So acetabular erosion is main problem with the bipolar, and this leads to groin pain. And so overall Harris's score, functional score is less over the THR. Now question is, why THR? most of the studies conclusion can be drawn in favor of THR because it is a definitive procedure. There is a no risk of early groin pain, no risk of late acetabular erosion, and overall score is better in comparison to the other modalities and early rehabilitation. And it is a guarantee processes which outlive the patient, and THR should be considered especially in these situations when any patient comes to you with the fracture upper end of femur. If patient was healthy before the injury, relatively healthy, better cognitive function, there was chondrolysis, like here you can see, there was, we planned for the bipolar, this patient, it was little old fracture, like more than one. So when we opened this patient, there was significant chondrolysis in the center. So we dropped the idea of doing bipolar. We converted, basically we did THR in this situation. And there is already THR should be done in pre-existing arthritis, osteoporotic bone, tumor like over here in at any stage. And now there are two important meta-analysis. They shows reoperation rate after the total hip arthroplasty is minimal if you compare with the hemi-arthroplasty or internal fixation. So minimum reoperation rate. So I will always prefer. Overall, what we feel, Harris's scope is also better. So I always prefer, if patient survive more than 3 years and patient is outdoor active in the outdoor activity, so I always go for THR, not for bipolar. That is my practice, and I am happy with my practice. And now question is which type of THR, whether it is cemented and uncemented. This depends on the patient factor as well as surgeon's choice. Both are good. And whether conventional stem or long stem in the fracture intertrochanteric, long stem may be required. Whether standard cup dual mobility may be required in the fracture intertrochanteric, because in intertrochanteric there is a no landmark to find out how much antiversion you have given. So dual mobility adjust some amount of lack of antiversion. Additional fixation that is required in the fracture intertrochanteric, like tension band wiring of greater trochanter, encirclage wiring of calcar, or even greater trochanter ethibond use. So these are the additional things. And doing total hip arthroplasty in these patients are more tricky than doing conventional hip arthroplasty in AVN hip and in other inflammatory arthritis of hip. Here it is more tricky. It is very important. Everybody should understand this. Now about the cemented, uncemented, both have pros and cons. So this depends on the quality. Overall, whether you do uncemented or cemented, you should achieve good quality of fixation. That is most important of the femoral component. And why cemented THR? It definitely, in the most of the time, I am also doing cemented THR, especially stem side, not towards the cup side in these patients. Why? Because bones are osteoporotic and less early failure, because early intraoperative complication, they are more like fracture and thigh pain. They are more with the uncemented total hip arthroplasty, less in the cemented total hip plasty. So this is also advantage of cemented total hip stem over the uncemented stem. Probably better functional score in early stage in the cemented in comparison. It is cost effective as well. Very important thing about the problem with the monomer in the cemented stem. Whenever patient is critically ill, so there are side effects because of monomer. Do not do cementing with the help of gun. Do it with the manual cementing. So it basically it is useful for the patient health during the cementing. And why non-cemented THR? It takes less time, less blood loss, and it probably lasts loss. And revision is easy in early stage. So you may consider for the uncemented THR. Now about the posterior approach, that is controversial approach. So dislocations, we all know dislocations are higher in the fracture neck femur and fracture trochanter. We already know. And previously it was reported dislocation are more in the posterior approach, but I do not agree with them because it was the old concept. Now new concept is there with the recognition of importance of extended myocapsular repair. The dislocation rate is as less as any approach in the posterior approach, and we hardly see any dislocation in many years doing like my AIMS experience doing hundreds of joints in a year. So hardly any in 2-3 years one dislocation like that. And but overall surgeon's comfort is most important. I am comfortable with the not only comfortable, happy with the posterior approach because it has many advantages. Now about how to do extended myocapsular repair. It is a video. This is the stay suture we apply during the exposure. Same stay suture can be used for the repair of can be resutured over the posterior border of the trochanter, starting from the piriformis fossa. Yeah, you can see. Then you just tied this knot in this abduction, external rotation, and extension. If you do this, it will never dislocate. Proper combined antiversion and proper repair. Dislocation rate is 0. Now, few points about the fracture intertrochanteric. Here, there are problems are much more in comparison to the fracture neck femur because identification of entry point. It is because you have no bony landmark. So most important things here, eyeballing your experience matters in cases of fracture IT. Because newcomer, budding surgeon, they may take help of image intensifier, and perforation of cortex is also not uncommon because of no bony landmark is there and bone are already osteoporotic. And so you can use what I do. I do not use image intensifier. Without image intensifier, I am able to do stable total eparthoplasty, no dislocation, because I take help of position of the table, position of the patient. Pelvis has to be true lateral and stable, and position of foot combined together gives excellent about the version towards the stem side. Other things which are required in the fracture intertrochanteric side, wiring for the greater trochanter and lesser trochanter, and distal femoral stem may be required sometime. So exposure is very demanding, as I told you, and position is very important in fracture intertrochanteric in comparison to the neck. Like I will show 2-3 important patients, and those who have done not very old patient. This was the mother of CRPF, 80 plus. Internal fixation failed. This totally was done. Later on it dislocated because it is intertrochanteric. Most of the surgeons, they fail because they do not know how to do proper, they are fail to recognize version of the stem most of the time. So what we did cement on cement, total eparthoplasty. Now patient is on foot. You can see the signs of union. We took out everything and put a plate and cement a small stem over here. And another patient, this is the father of a faculty, AIMS Bhopal, operated in UP, Mr. Gupta, 77, done I think 6 months back. And internal fixation was done, failed. Then second surgery at UP, it was done. It is a dual mobility cup. It is dislocated. Don't think I have put dual mobility. It will not dislocate. The quality of surgery is most important than your dual mobility at bipolar. It has failed. So he came to us. So what was there? Fortunately, he put modular stem. This is a stem from the Stryker, excellent stem. So what we did when we found out this stem was in 30 to 40 degree of retroversion. And what we did, we changed only upper part of stem because it is a modular stem, where put it back in proper anti-version, and patient was now excellently fine, no dislocation till last follow-up around 2 months. And so overall, few other things, reconstruction, as I told you, abductor strength, fixation of the stem, and these material reconstruction is also very important to prevent the dislocation. Ethibond, encerclage wire, everything you can show, you can see in all these photographs. All these things is required for the intertrochanteric, and this is one of the steps of reconstruction. So overall, modality of treatment depend on the type of the fracture, life expectancy. Arthroplasty in fracture IT is very tricky. As I showed you, there are a lot of cases. I've showed you 2 important cases. And failure of internal fixation, unipolar and bipolar, is more than the THR. Processes overall, when you offer unipolar, bipolar, overall concept is processes should outlive the patient. In extreme age group, low demand patient, cemented bipolar is good option. THR is not only definitive procedure, but it also gives better result in the active patient. So thank you all. This is all. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vizlani. Thank you, Salim. Can you hear me? Ashish, it was
Yes, sir.
uninterrupted.
We can hear you.
Video was okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, perfect. Everything was fine.
Perfect, sir.
So Ashish, do you have any questions for them?
Yes, sir. For Mr. Dr. Ram Prabhu, sir. Sir, in municipal settings or in patients with DEXA and patients cannot come back. So what generally you give? I mean, Decadurabolin, you just prescribe it randomly, because I remember giving it to my grandmother when I was very young. So it's a long time history of the drugs. And in general, how do you prescribe? I mean, just if you don't have any other things like getting serum, calcium, PTH, or any other investigations.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
So I
sir.
think very good question. In fact, of course, we have learned it from our seniors when we are working as residents, and we used to give a combination of Arachidol that time, the vitamin D in 6 lakhs units. We used to also give Decadurabolin, either 25 milligram or 50 milligram, and we used to give them alternatively three injections each. Okay, in all those elderly patients, along with calcium supplements, and sometimes, of course, the proteins also were needed, because all this is a healthy combination to be given to most of the elderly people to prevent. We can't really prevent or make osteoporosis zero, but we can at least control it so that the chances of fractures are less. The patient's balancing has to be controlled too, because when we check and give strain to the muscles, most important is that patient's balance is much better and the chances of falling down is less. Okay, so that is important. So this combination of vitamin D, Decadurabolin, along with calcium supplements and protein supplements is very important to be given. And in fact, even if you don't see osteoporosis by DEXA, etc., you can randomly also give it so that it doesn't really give any adverse effects. But don't exceed the dose of this, okay, especially in females.
Yes, sir.
So 3 to 5 injections is good enough, I feel. And this is
It was an excellent.
overall all across India. Even if you don't do bone mineral density, DEXA, etc. I think this is safely can be given, and which has been found to be very, very good. Even post-operatively, even if they have had fracture once, we have to prevent the secondary or second or third time fractures, because then they are bound to have again falls again and again. So if even if there is a Colles' wrist fracture, if a person comes, it would be good advice to give them to take this vitamin D, calcium supplements, and decadurabolin. And I routinely give it in most of these elderly patients.
Yeah, Dr. Yadav, you wanted to add something?
One question from Dr. Ram Prabhu.
Yes, sir.
Sir, as we know, walking, jogging, they are very good to prevent osteoporosis.
Yes, sir.
It improves the bone health. So
Yeah.
this is the there are many types of exercises. If you select one or two exercises, which is best for to prevent sarcopenia?
Okay, so this is also a good exercise question. See, those people who have never done any exercises in the past, okay, asking them to jog or do some kind of high impact exercises are detrimental to them. So beyond the age of 40, if they have never done exercises in the childhood or in the middle age, I would ask them to just walk or swim if they can. Swimming is many times not possible because there are paucity of swimming pools. But swimming pool or swimming exercises and walking is the best form of exercise. They can also do static cycling, okay, and some kind of dumbbell exercises, some weight exercises for upper limb are good, but stretching exercises are recommended, walking are recommended, and I routinely tell them do not jog, jump, do skipping, aerobics, etc. And of course, if you add yoga and meditation, it helps in aerobic kind of exercises, and these are routinely should be given.
Yeah,
If
yoga is combination of everything. Yeah.
those people who are used to playing or sports or some kind of exercises, you can definitely tell them to jog. Jogging is a wonderful exercise, definitely. But preferably after 50, 55, jogging should not be a first choice of exercise.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Salim, yes.
Yeah, sir, I would like to ask you one question regarding nandrolone. So
Yeah.
would you like to give it in combination with alendronate
See,
as an adjuvant with alendronate?
biophosphonates are very good, and they should also constitute a very important management protocol in osteoporosis. I do not sort of mix it, but biphosphonates, many of my osteoporotic patients are on biphosphonates otherwise also, okay, weekly or monthly doses. So we can always add this nandrolone to this. You know, there is no contraindication of using this.
Right, right, sir.
So they have a different pathway of acting. Bone resorption or absorption has nothing to do with androgenic effects.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
So
sir.
I think, of course, you can give bisphosphonates, you know, and they are recommended.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
What about, I want to ask a question to Dr. Yadav. What about post-operative? Means when will you give? Means supposing if you operated a case today of a femur fracture or a spine fracture or a hip fracture. So when would you like to give decadurabolin? Within 2 days before discharge, exactly when and how much?
Basically, I think it is not so important, but patient, if there is no contraindication, patient can receive decadurabolin at any time.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Yadav. Decadurabolin can always be given, but if you're a little scared, you can always give them after suture removal, and that would be good, because the effect of this is going to be long lasting, and if we are not giving it as an acute phase. So it's not that it is going to help in fracture healing. It is basically to prevent or to control osteoporosis.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any studies for fracture healing of this drug. So I don't know whether probably Dr. Salim may be able to tell me. Or if it is not done, we can do such trials.
Basically, there is no contraindication even giving before the surgery, even after the surgery, because that study, that total knee arthroplasty.
Yes.
So, so that was suggest. So it basically help in healing anabolism. So, but it doesn't increase the infection rate.
Okay, fine. So not about infection, but I don't know whether there are any concomitant studies. I'm very sorry.
But it is very painful. Sometimes it is very painful. The patient is already having pain of the surgery, then another site of pain. So that these things may be considered.
Yeah. So I think because it's a sort of oily injection, it is painful.
In some patients,
Yes, sir.
in some patient, it may be painful.
So, Dr. Ashish Singh, you want to ask anything to Dr. Yadav?
There was an excellent presentation from both Dr. Ram Prabhu sir and Dr. C.S. Yadav sir, and enlightenment has been done, actually speaking. That's what I would like to say. Lots of things, queries came, and especially with the case presentations. I liked it. Thank you.
And what is MACO is going on, Ashish?
Sir, Meko will be coming, sir, after a month when on the way.
You are doing excellent thing in Bihar.
Yeah,
Patna.
Dr. Salim wants to ask something.
Yes, sir. One question for Dr. Yadav.
Yeah.
So you spoke about doing a THR, and that was a cemented one, in which chances of periprosthetic fractures are very less. So my call is, sir, when you have done a cemented THR, suppose a patient develops a periprosthetic fracture, like you can say a long oblique fracture, subtrochanteric, maybe. So would you like to put a longer stem, or would you like to fix it with a plate and retain the prosthesis?
Basically, then I would like to convert it into the long stem uncemented THR,
Uncemented.
like Wagner type of stem.
Wagner.
Once fracture during surgery, fracture has taken place. If you do cemented THR, there may be splays in between the fracture sites. So patient may go into the non-union. I do not have much experience of doing cemented, even the cemented stem. So, but I prefer in very elderly osteoporotic bone cemented stem. But even this Wagner type of stem can be used in osteoporotic long stem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree with it.
I think it was a very good webinar. It was a very good webinar.
On behalf of Zydus, I would like to thank.
Yes, Dr. Salim, you can go ahead.
Yeah. On behalf of Zydus, I would like to thank Dr. Ram Prabhu sir for giving his time and for a brilliant presentation. What he has cleared the concepts about decadurabolin, and Dr. C.S. Yadav sir on the surgical management and giving us the options of prosthesis which we can use in cases of osteoporotic fractures. I thank you all, and Dr. Ashish Singh for his participation. Thank you all, sir. Neeraj.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Salim.
you everyone for being with us. And it was excellent interaction. I learned quite a few things. Dr. Yadav, thank you very much.
Sir,
And,
brother,
all of you
elder brother.
for interacting. So good, all the best. And let's start using this anabolic steroid more often. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.